Hello everyone, my name is Saurabh Kumar and I welcome you all to my video series of Amazon Web Service. We have reached now part number 23. In this session, we will be covering about security group, which we have seen practically in previous session. We have also seen practical of NACL, so we will have a bit talk about NACL. Thereafter, we will move to the route 53, which is exactly same like a DNS service which we have in Windows or in Linux machine. So we will have a complete discussion about route 53 in this particular session. So let's begin. So here we can see there is difference between security group and network access control list. Practically we have seen how to utilize them, how do we use it, but let's try to understand in a right way here that what exactly the difference between them. Why do we have a security group also there and then network access control list also? So before I try to start explaining these things, let me move to maybe my paint screen and I show you from there. Generally when we talk about this both of the things, how exactly the VPC works. So first of all, whenever we talk about VPC, we are having here the gateway. So this is our gateway. If I give the name, maybe this is nothing else, it is my gateway, internet gateway. So any request, any incoming connection to your VPC, first it hits on the gateway. So first request comes and that is going to the gateway. After gateway, now what is the next device which we communicate? So after gateway, the very next device which we have, that is nothing else. We can call it either device or we can call it like a router simply. So we have router. This router is having routing table which you have maybe configured here, which route it is having allowed or something. Thereafter, after the routing table, you are going to directly get in touch with NACL. Here is NACL placed, network access control list. So you can see whenever any incoming connection is coming to your VPC, NACL is going to the first who is going to work as a security filter. Thereafter, once NACL is already passed, then it goes to the subnet. Maybe you have created multiple subnets, so 1 subnet, 2 subnet, 3 subnet, as many number of subnet you have. After the subnet, then it goes to the security group. Here we have the security group. And this security group is having now connection with the your EC2 instance. Whatever instance it is running, maybe it is running Linux machine, maybe it is running Windows machine. So this security group generally we can create per EC2 instance also. Like for this EC2 instance we have another security group, for this another EC2 instance we have another security group, like that. But this NACL is going to work for this entire subnet. This entire subnet is going to be working through this NACL. So from this subnet, you may have another security group and that security group is connected to another EC2 instance. Maybe you have another instance there, maybe you have used the same security group, that is also possible. But what we can see here, the difference that NACL is working for our entire subnet, whole subnet, where the security group is working for any individual EC2 instance, or maybe it can work for multiple EC2 instance, but not for whole subnet. So who is having priority here? Obviously the priority will be NACL, because the first request goes to NACL. Once it allow, then only it goes and reaches to the security group. So now it will be easy for us to understand when I come back here. Let's try to understand now the difference between security group and NACL. So security group, it is saying that it operates at instance level, and I hope now you are getting me what I am trying to tell. Instance level, it works for each instance basis we can set security group. Then NACL operates at subnet level, meaning that when we create an NACL, we attach it with one subnet, and that NACL is going to do the filtering task for entire subnet, not for a specific EC2 instance. Next is security groups support allow rule only, where NACL support both allow and deny rule both. So to have this one in our mind, we are required to see it that exactly is it really possible that in security group we can only set allow, where in NACL we can have both. So for that, let's try to go to the console. So I go to my browser and I try to log in there, AWS, sign into the console. And as we have seen in the last session that I have shown you with setting up both of these things, I'm again going to show you something which is mentioned here, that security group only support allow rule, otherwise by default everything is denied, and you don't have any option to set any deny rule there. But in NACL we can have both choice, allow and deny. So let's see it practically. Now to reach up to the security group, you can use any of these two service, either EC2 service or either you can go to VPC. It will be available in both. Let me show you. If I go to EC2 and if I go to VPC, let me reach to both of them. So in EC2 management console also, you will be able to see security group option there. Down, you see security group. And here you can see there is a by default one security group is created when I was creating a specific EC2 instance, or when you have a VPC, because there is already by default VPC there. So with the default VPC you also have a default security group. So this is the default security group. And here if you go to the setting of rule, we have always two type of rule, inbound and outbound. Inbound means what type of connection request can come in, you are filtering from here. What kind of connection can go out, you are filtering from here. So you see here in inbound rule or in outbound rule, what we have here is, if I go to edit, you see there is a no option to set there deny or allow. What you have is by default everything is denied when you create a new security group. You just have to add a rule. Maybe I choose what type of rule. Maybe I want to allow HTTP, so I select HTTP, set protocol, range, define the source, thereafter the range of IP, description, but there is no option to set here allow or deny. Meaning that whatever protocol I have choose, it is only going to make it allow rule by default. Otherwise by default every protocol is denied. Let me show you with creating a new security group. So for example, if I click on create new security group, I mention any name. Maybe I give the name that ABCD sec group. I just give the name like this. Create. Let me just add any description. Testing VP security group, sec group. Then I try to create. So here you see I have created a new security group, that is ABCD sec group. That's the group name of this. So in this group, if I go to this security group, you see there is no any rule right now. So by default everything is denied. I can just go there and I can choose any protocol, range, source, and then I click on save. What does it mean? It means that HTTP is going to be now allowed. So that is what it is mentioned here. It support only allow rule. Whatever you add, whatever protocol or port number you add, that is going to be allowed. Otherwise rest of all are going to be already denied. But let me show you about the network access control list. How does it works? So now to get network access control list, we don't have any option in EC2. You see here in EC2 option, EC2 console, we don't have any option to reach to the network access control list. So we have to go to VPC. But if we talk about security group, it is also available in VPC console. So if you go to VPC, here also if you scroll down, you will be able to see security group. So security group is available in both EC2 management console as well as in VPC management console, where network access control list is only available in VPC management console. So we go to VPC management console. Let's try to go to the network access control list. And here you see By default, one network access control list is there, and if you check the inbound outbound rule, go to inbound rule, you see here by default all traffics are going to be deny, but it is because my default network access control list, so there is a one rule of 100, the number is 100, and it has allow condition. So here if you try to add, if you go to edit add rule, you see here you have both choice to set allow and deny here. So this is what I have mentioned here, that it support both allow and deny rules. I hope it is clear to you all. Next is security group is a example of a stateful firewall, where network access control list is an example of a stateless firewall. What is the difference now between a stateful and a stateless? Let's try to understand it. So for better understanding, let me come back to my paint a screen here. Let me get a new. Here we know about something about firewall. So if I talk about it, we have firewall. Firewall works like how? In the firewall, we generally have two things to always set there. Inbound rule, and then we also set, sorry for a spelling mistake here, inbound rule or outbound rule. This is the two type of rule we make there. Inbound rule means, as I told you, what type of request you are planning to maybe allow who is coming in or deny, that is we are going to set in inbound rule, and what type of traffic you want to stop or allow, that you configure in outbound rule. So inbound and outbound, there are two type of rule we set and two type of condition we set, that is allow or deny. This is the two act we set there, the condition. So now we are talking about two type of firewall on the basis of their work. Otherwise people may say that there are two type of firewall, one is hardware firewall, one is software firewall. So I'm not going to discuss on that way. I'm talking about their function basis. So firewall can be of two type here. One is we consider it as a stateful, and one I'm considering as a stateless. So what is the difference between a stateful and a stateless type of firewall is, if we talk about a stateful firewall, what happens generally that, as per its name, it is a stateful, meaning that, for example, if I create any inbound rule, let's say that I have created an inbound rule telling that port number 22 allow. Maybe this is the rule I made, that port number 22 for SSH I want to allow. Maybe it is my PC that is running Windows Linux, Red Hat Linux, and I want to allow SSH connection there. So I have allowed port number 22. What happen in a stateful type of firewall, that automatically there will be a outbound rule. There will be automatically outbound rule created, and that is going to allow automatically port number 22, because it is a stateful type of firewall. We generally set only inbound type of rule, and outbound type of rule will be automatically created by itself. That is the default condition. That is what a stateful type of firewall is. So if you have ever used Cisco PIX type of firewall, or those, if I talk about 10 year 15 year back from as of now, most of the firewall were a stateful only. Thereafter they introduced the stateless, because there is a security loop, you see. Maybe for example there is a condition that, okay, I want to set some condition that maybe my incoming connection should have allow, I want to allow incoming connection at port number 22, but outgoing connection I want to allow for SSH maybe by using port number 1022. So if I want to set such kind of condition where my port number is getting changed for incoming and going out, that was not possible in a stateful. So they have introduced now a stateless type of firewall, where you can set, we can set inbound rule, as well as outbound rule separately, and it is not going to be by default set. For example, if we set inbound rule, outbound rule is not going to be set by itself. We have to set it manually, we have to set it separately. So that is what the difference between a stateful and a stateless type of firewall is. So now we can go back and we see here that security groups is a type of a stateful. So return traffic is by default allowed. If you have allowed for incoming, return will be by default allowed regardless of any rules. Wherein a stateless, return traffic must be allowed explicitly by the rule only. We have to configure it for incoming also, for outgoing also. Until unless you don't configure, nothing is going to be done automatic. So it is more secure, it gives you better security compared to the stateful type of firewall. Then the last point about security group is it applied selectively to the individual instance. You can specifically set or make it for a specific individual instance. Like for example, I make one security group where I have allowed port number 22, especially for the Linux machine. And then I have made a separate security group where I have allowed only RDP and HTTP, for example, for Windows machine. So that is possible. Where in network ACL, it automatically applied to all instance in the associated subnet. This is a backup layer of defense. So I hope now it's very clear to you all that security group and network ACL is having a lot difference there, and altogether it is providing us a better security, better defense on the instances, on the services or whatever you are running over the AWS cloud. Next thing here is I have tried to explain the same thing which I was explaining in the paint here in the PPT. So here you see our first request coming from outside world goes to the internet gateway. Internet gateway forward this packet to our router, which router is following the routing table. After following the routing table, it reaches to the network access control list. If the traffic is allowed there, then it reaches to the relevant subnet, attached subnet, and thereafter there can be multiple security group as per the multiple instances you are running, and then after crossing to the security group, it reaches to the instance. This is how the VPC architecture is. This is how the VPC is being actually designed. That if you talk about the position of the devices on VPC, this picture is giving you a clear idea that what is the position, what is the place of network ACL, what is the place for security group, what is the place for instance, where it is located router, where it is located internet gateway. So this picture is nothing else. I have just tried to add it here to give you a better clear view about the position of the component in VPC. One more thing I have added here, that is VPC, in the VPC, that is virtual private gateway. So we have to understand now something about VPG also, virtual private gateway. Let's try to have a look about it. So there are some other VPC component. One I am going to talk about is called as a VPG. It is virtual private gateway. I hope you already knowing about VPN concept, right? Which provide virtual private network over the public network. So to have the VPN type of connection between your premises up to the AWS premises, we need two components there. One is VPG, one is CGW. So one is virtual private gateway, one is customer gateway. What it is actually? So VPG, virtual private gateway, is a virtual private network concentrator. So it is nothing like, it's like a concentrator on the AWS side of VPN connection, which provides the VPN connection up to the your premises, where at your premises at customer side we are going to use CGW, a customer gateway, which represents a physical device or a software application on the consumer side or customer side of the VPN connection. So maybe this is AWS VPC, virtual private cloud, and here this is your company. So at your company side, you need CGW. At the VPC, you are going to use the service which is called as a VPG. You are going to create here VPG, and the connection between this VPG to CGW will be VPN connection. So by using these two, we will be able to create the VPN tunnel. Let's try to understand this same thing with the help of this picture. Here you see, we have AWS VPC here in a region, in a specific zone. Maybe we are running some instances. So this all instances are connected to the router. Router is connected to VPG, virtual private gateway, and this gateway I am connecting with the help of my device, that is customer gateway, and here I am having the VPN connection. So this connection is through the internet, but still I am having a connection like a private network. That's why it is called VPN. It is going to be secure. You can have maybe you can use IPsec there for security purpose, and that's how your local infrastructure devices will be able to talk or communicate with instances or services which is running at VPC as similar like they are in a same LAN. Okay, so now let's move to the next topic, that is Route 53. Now, before we move to Route 53, we have to be knowing some basic information about the DNS. So let me first go with some basic information about the DNS. I hope you all are very much clear about the naming system. Our Windows environment, Linux environment, or if you are using even Cisco devices, we always use naming system there. Like if you have a computer on your network, so every computer, what we set, that we set a host name. For this computer, maybe the computer name you have given, that is let's say that it is account PC, so you have given the name account ACC hyphen PC. So that is nothing else, it is the host name of this PC. Windows computer, generally nowadays we set the host name there. So host name is a computer name that is added to a domain name also, and the top level to make a fully qualified domain name. This is nothing else, it's related to DNS now. Generally, for example, if you have created a domain, what happens generally that if you are talking about the naming system there, we have a host name, then maybe you are having a domain infrastructure and your domain name is, let's say that abc.com, abc.com. So altogether what becomes the fully qualified domain name, that is PC name dot domain name dot top level name, meaning that it will become accpc dot abc dot com. That becomes the fully qualified domain name. So always host name is very important in our network. Before we were having a different term which is right now even in use, but mostly it is being only used by the Microsoft, that is NetBIOS. Network Basic Input Output System name are rarely used nowadays and are being deprecated in Windows operating system only, and this one support only 15 character. So even nowadays when you set the host name, no, already it is going to have a NetBIOS name there. Generally whatever host name you are going to set, it is going to remain same when you are talking about NetBIOS right now, as of now. But if I talk about old days like 10-15 years back, NetBIOS was having very important role there. Windows was assuming that he is going to capture the whole market, and this methodology which he has introduced with the NetBIOS and Win server and all, it is going to be completely used by everybody out of the world. So NetBIOS is nothing else, it's also a unique name over the network for every host machine. And before we were having a Wins type of service running on the Windows premises. So it is nothing else, it is called Windows Internet Naming Service. It was also doing almost same task like the way we have right now DNS. So it was just converting the NetBIOS name or a computer name to the IP. But we have nowadays which is DNS. We are no longer using much Wins, we are using DNS nowadays. So DNS is doing what? It is also helping us to resolve the domain name to IP, IP to the domain name. and DNS is using taking help of the host name with the domain name. So altogether it is called as a FQDN, fully qualified domain name. So generally DNS is going to resolve FQDN to the IP and IP to the FQDN. Let's try to have more look about it. DNS hierarchy. So here we see DNS hierarchy. Either you are using any DNS services, either you are using from Windows or AWS or anywhere, this is the hierarchy will be followed everywhere. So we have here top level domain TLD, that is nothing else, it is a dot. Let's take example of anything. For example, if I take example of wikipedia.com, so we have the fully qualified domain name something like www.wikipedia. I'm just writing shortcut wikipedia.com. So after even .com there is a dot. We generally ignore it. We don't need to even type it when we are browsing the website or something, but it is there. This dot is nothing else, it is a top level domain. And this domain, this type of domain server are actually running almost like in 10 to 15 different country. Those especially country, those who are war-free country. Like if we talk about Switzerland, Finland, these are some of the country where they have already having a written, kind of agreement with all other countries that there is no any going to be war with this country. No any country is going to attack on this country and this country will never attack on any other country. This kind of agreement they are having, and they are one of, you can call them as a safe country. So those countries where these 15 servers are running, those are running as a root top level domain server actually, root DNS. So those DNS is the one who is resolving our query for the top level domain. That will be now next, that is com, org, net, de and others. There can be so many other things on the basis of maybe the country. You can have ug, .in, .us. So these all are something which we set at the top level. So this is our top level domain, this is our root domain, and here we have the name of the domain, whatever name you have registered with. Somebody has registered with Saipali, somebody has registered with Google, somebody has registered with Gmail. So this is the name here, and thereafter in the name also we can have some other kind of zones maybe, or maybe you can have a different condition. For example, in Google we have mail, especially for mail is a separate domain, so they can have the name like mail.google.com. so it will be here mail.google.com. That will be the fully qualified domain name. That's the DNS hierarchy is, and it is being followed by every DNS server. Either you have on-premises DNS server, either you have AWS or any other else. Next thing, we have to understand that in this hierarchy we have to also follow the same things when we are using the root 53 also. I'm going to again talk about root 53, so let's just wait for a moment. Another thing, before we move to the root 53, we have to understand that DNS works with the help of two type of lookup zones. One is forward lookup zone, one is reverse lookup zone. I hope you all are you have worked with before DNS, either it is Microsoft DNS or something also. So when you, let's take example of Microsoft DNS server. When you install the DNS role, by default the forward lookup zone can be created by itself, but reverse you have to create. And what is the overall work of the forward lookup zone and reverse lookup zone is, forward will be helping you to resolve a domain name into the IP address. So for example, if I type www.saipali.com, it will resolve me and it will tell me what is the IP address assigned to this domain. So any host name if you have in your network, in your domain, you can resolve by the name and you can receive the output as a IP address. Where reverse lookup zone works in a just opposite way. If you know maybe the IP address of any device, you can ask, you can send a query to the DNS server telling that this is the IP, so that DNS will send, it will resolve and it will send you respond back with the name of the DNS, with the name of the host name, with the name of fully qualified domain name. So for example, if I say, if I generate a query, I go to a Windows machine, I go to NSLookup and I type there any domain name or something, it will be giving me the IP address by the help of forward lookup zone. If I type the IP address, it will revert back me with the domain name. So that is how the two type of lookup zones are there working to help the DNS function. Next point is DNS record. What are the type of record DNS is storing there? So there are very many type of record. As you see here, there are 8 type of records are. Out of them, these ones, A4A, MX, SRV, NS, SOA, CNAME, these records are being stored into the forward lookup zone, where PTR record is being stored into the reverse lookup zone. Sorry for a mistake. It will be stored into the reverse lookup zone. So this A is nothing else, it is a IP version 4 record. If your any host machine is using IP version 4, so their name will be added there with the IP version 4 address as a record. If your host is using version 6, it will be stored as a 4A record. If you are having any mail server in your domain, then you will be adding that record as a MX record. If you have any specific service which you want to add in your DNS, it will be SRV record. If you have any name server, you can have 1 name server, 2 name server, 10 name server. Those all server who are running DNS actually, you can consider them as a name server as well. So those name server entry you can add in the NS record. Thereafter, you can have SOA record, a start of authority record. It maintains some kind of number, numeric value, which represent a lot of information about the DNS replication and all. And then we have CNAME also, that is canonical name or common name. We call it both common name or canonical name. So it is nothing else. It's like a you can say optional thing there. Like for example, if your PC is having a name Win X253C dot something something, then rather than having this big name, what we can do is we can set a canonical name. We can use a shortcut name. Maybe we give the name www to it. So this www is not a real name of the PC, it is a canonical name we have assigned to this computer. So these all records are actually stored in as a forward lookup zone in the DNS record, where PTR, that is called as a pointer record, it is stored in the reverse lookup zone. It keeps the information that which IP address is having connection with which host name. I mean which IP address can be resolved to which name. That records are being stored as a PTR record, and it is stored in the reverse lookup zone. So now we can start talking about route 53. So here we can see about route 53. It is nothing else. It is a AWS authoritative DNS actually. Authoritative means it is the one who can resolve the query directly. It doesn't have to take help from anybody else. It can directly also help you to resolve the query. So route 53 is a AWS authoritative DNS service, and it can handle unpredictable traffic with high availability feature. That's the plus point about Amazon Route 53. That's why people like to use it, because it can handle unpredictable traffic. If you have today maybe 100 requests, tomorrow maybe 1000, then you have million of requests, it can be able to easily handle them. It will be in a position to handle all different query, and it is actually scalable easily. So that's why people prefer to use nowadays Route 53. Here you can see how does it work. So we have multiple customer maybe, or maybe any individual's computer. They are sending the request. Their request will be coming to Route 53 DNS. It will be resolving that query. It will be helping these users to resolve this name to the IP, and on the basis of that, the request will be going to the relevant IP address machine or instance. So this means instance, maybe they are running elastic public IP address, and that IP address will be resolved here with the help of root 53. So here we have elastic group where we have multiple instances running over there. Maybe you can have the same IP for them, or you can have multiple IP for them. That's depend on the condition, that depend on the scenario, that depend on the company requirement. So now next thing, let's try to have a look about it, that is what are the features of root 53 are, what are the Amazon features are. Yeah, so here we can see some of the feature. First feature is reliable. If we talk about root 53, it is very much reliable, it is redundant, and why I am calling it reliable, because it is going to be available everywhere. If I talk about this service, root 53, it is not region based, it is not availability zone based, it is a global service, so it is available globally. It is maybe running on multiple region, multiple availability zone, so that's why it is giving you the better reliability, redundancy, backed with SLA, that is agreement. So they give you already the agreement of 99.999%, 59 or something like that. So that's why we can call it like it is very much reliable compared to any other DNS service. It is fast, and it is worldwide anycast network, fast propagation of changes. Another feature is integrated with AWS. So it is even having integration with ELB, elastic load balancing, Elias query, latency based routing it support. More to come. There are so many new things is about to come about the root 53. So this latency based routing I am going to explain in today itself lesson. Don't worry about it. Next point is it is easy to use because it gives you a proper graphic console where from you will be able to easily manage it. There are some fewer steps which you just have to follow, and then your DNS is ready to be used. So it is easy to use. It is programmatic API. You can also access it through the API, and domain naming, domain name management, you can do it from there. It is very much cost effective because to have a DNS service at your on premises, you need server, you need infrastructure, you need Windows there or any operating system. Then you have to have the product key for it. Then you run a service or role there. Then you need some engineers to manage it. Then you need power backup solution and so on, which is very much costly. Where if you compare it with the root 53, it is going to be very, very cheap. So it is very cost effective, which is inexpensive rates, pay as you go model. You more you use, more you have to pay, less you use, less you have to pay. That's the good point about root 53. Last point is it is very much flexible, and it also support geo type of geo based routing it supports. So I will talk about what is geo based routing is, and then it is self aliasing, weighted round robin also it support. So I am going to discuss about all of this. What is weighted round robin, what is geo DNS, what is latency based routing. So these all are the types of you can say like a policy. So I am going to talk about them one by one in this today's session itself. So let's move about it. Very first thing is it gives the high availability. How it is giving high availability? Because Amazon Root 53 is highly available and a scalable DNS web service. As I told you that it is not region based or availability zone based service. So it is accessible from anywhere. You can access it. It is available all the time. It gives you SLA, service level agreement. Then it is designed to give developers and enterprises an extremely reliable and cost effective way to route end users to internet application. So it can be used by a very small organization also. It can be used by the very big enterprise level organization also. It uses advanced routing policies, as like we have normally if you are using DNS, we just have the simple type of routing policy, but it supports advanced routing policy like those names which I have mentioned earlier, with the health check and failover to ensure your application is always available to end user. So it support everything. It gives you the failover. It has the health check function inside of it. It makes sure that you have the advanced routing policy. You can set the policy on the basis of geolocation, on the basis of failover and all. Next point is the function of Amazon Route 53. So there are three major functions of the Amazon Route 53, and this is the main things which you have to understand here. For example, if you will start working in any company as a AWS engineer, if you will be asked to set the Route 53, you have to perform three major tasks there. First is domain registration. You have to register your domain name there, whatever domain name you want to have. Maybe you want to have saipali.com, saipali.education, abc.com, whatever domain name, whatever new company you are starting with. Maybe you want to start a company where the domain name you want to have itinfra.com. So first you have to register that domain. That's the first function you have to you can have through the Route 53. You don't have to look for any other service provider like GoDaddy or anywhere else to buy or register the DNS. You can do it directly from Route 53 itself. That's the good point. Second is DNS service. You will be mapping that about DNS name with the relevant IP address. Whenever you buy, whenever you register the DNS name, they give you the public IP of that. So you have to now do the configure it as a DNS service, mapping that IP address with the domain name. And the third thing is health check. So Route 53 sends the automated request over the internet to verify either your application is reachable, available and functionable or not. If it is not, then it says the health down and it routes the traffic to the those server only, those health is okay or good. Let's try to understand the same thing with the help of maybe this diagram. Here I have for DNS failover. You see here. Here, if I talk about the half part of it, maybe I have two different regions where I have some EC2 instances running. Those all EC2 instances I have added them in a one ELB, Elastic Load Balancing. And this entire ELB is having maybe a specific DNS name and elastic IP address. That IP address I will add and route to the Route 53. I will add here. Plus the another region is also having multiple instances running in a same ELB, and this ELB will be also added as an entry or a record in your Route 53. So Route 53 is going to do the health check of them. If both of them are okay, this will be automatically using maybe round robin technique or failover technique, that if a traffic comes, one request goes to here, second request goes to here, third request goes to here, fourth request goes to here. If in case maybe if any EC2 instance gets off, maybe this entire region is no longer responding, this becomes unhealthy and all the traffic now will be going to only one. So this mechanism is called as a failover. Even if your entire region gets fail, your service is still available by the help of different region. So it improves the availability of application running on AWS, plus it enable high available multi-region AWS. As I told you, it can be available on multiple regions as well as on multiple availability zones. Next point about it, that what are the type of hosted zones can be. So hosted zone is a collection of resource record sets hosted by the Amazon Route 53. It managed under a single domain name, whatever name you have defined there, and there are two types, one is private, one is public. So most of the time, generally if you are working for an enterprise company, you will be having 95 to 98% time you will be configuring public type of hosted zone. Only 2% chances are some of the company they need a private environment where they want to have a private DNS server. Then you can have a private type of hosted zone where the route traffic within one or more Amazon VPC is there only. But if we are configuring public type of, meaning that the traffic will be routed on the internet for domain and subdomains. So that's why I'm telling you, most of the time 95 to 98% chances are you will be having a public type. Only in some special condition, maybe you have some testing, or maybe you are making some test environment, or you are doing some experiment there, then you need to have the private type of hosted zone. Next point is what are the routing policies are. So as I earlier mentioned here in today's lesson that there can be simple routing policy, like if you are using Windows DNS server, what do we have there? We generally have the simple routing policy there. You just put the DNS there, you just add the record there. On the basis of that, it just resolve the query. That's it. It doesn't check where from you are requesting or any other things. But now we have the complex routing policies as well. We have weighted round robin, latency based, failover routing policy, and geolocation routing. So what are these different complex routing policies are? Let me explain them one by one, all of them. So let me start with weighted round robin. What is weighted round robin is? If you have ever used Windows DNS server, by default round robin is already enabled there also. What is the meaning of round robin is? For example, you have one DNS server here, and maybe you have a website running on multiple, I will not call it instance because I'm talking about the on-premises infrastructure. So maybe I have 3 servers in my company. These are web server 1, web server 2, web server 3. I have maybe put the same website page on all of them, but I have only one DNS server maybe. So my request, somebody is maybe saying www.saipali.com, request comes here. Then if your round robin is working there in this DNS, it will send the first query to the first one. Then if some other request comes, second request will go to this one. The third request comes, it will go to the third one. If the fourth request comes, it will go to the first one. So this mechanism is called as a round robin. It checks how many total number of servers you have there, and it start using them in a sequence way. It start using first, then second, then third, then again first, then second, then third, then again first, then second, then third, like that. So this is what it is mentioned there, that weighted resource record set allow you to associate multiple record with a single DNS name. And this one is useful in load balancing. It is helping you to do the load balance because one request goes here, second goes here. So at least this one becomes a bit free. It's not sending all the load to one. So it is doing a load balancing, but it is not doing a fault tolerance or something. So generally we use it in our local infrastructure or somewhere, or maybe if you are doing a testing or something, you use weighted round robin mechanism there. Second category, second type of complex policy is latency based routing. Latency based routing means maybe you have 3 servers. Maybe by default somebody was sending a request. So this is your DNS server. A request came to DNS server. It has forwarded the request to this one. But maybe this machine is taking too much time. Maybe you have seen some of the time that if you are visiting a website, it is doing too much buffering. It is taking so much time. That is called the latency time. So if any server is taking too much time because of latency problem or something, immediately this DNS server will forward this information, this request to the next one. So what has this DNS server done is, what this policy is doing, it is shifting the request on the basis of latency. Maybe this server latency is too high right now, it is very slow, then all the requests go to this one. So now at least your customer will be happy, they will not have that buffering situation there. So this type of routing is called as a latency based routing. It enables to run multiple stack on your application in different EC2 region of the world. You have multiple EC2 instance. Help in providing low latency to the end user. Whatever server is giving the low latency, immediately it will forward the packet to that machine, and the customer will get a very quick response and he will be happy. It supported endpoints of the latency based routing can be EC2 instance, ELB. So these are the examples of the latency based routing. They can support latency based routing there. Now the third category is failover based routing. So you can have again multiple instances running there, maybe 1 instance, 2 instance, 3 instance, and you have a DNS server here. DNS checks their health, and if any one of them gets fail, all the request goes to the another one, so it is giving you a failover, meaning that a customer will never have any problem even if your one server gets fails. So failover resource record sets for private hosted zone not supported. A health check tells the Amazon Route 53 how to send request to the endpoint, whose health you want to check, and these are the protocol it uses: HTTP, HTTPS, TCP. It works on the basis of IP address and port number. It helps, or it uses domain name and the path. So these are the some information about the failover type of routing policy. And the last, which is very interesting, and nowadays most of the DNS server like to have it, even AWS is already having it, Google uses it, that is called geolocation routing. What is the meaning of geolocation routing here is, for example, I am sitting here, currently maybe I am sitting, let's say that in Delhi, I am sitting in Delhi, which is a city in India. Maybe I am typing here www.google.com. So where is the actual Google server is? It is in America. So my request supposed to actually go to the America server, and he should respond me, which will be taking too much time, which will be a bit slow. What this geolocation routing policy does, that when you send this request www.google.com, your nearest DNS server checks that where from this request is coming, which continent. Is it coming from Asia? Is it coming from Australia? Is it coming from America? Which continent it is coming from? Then in that continent, which country it is coming from? And then in that country, which state or which area it is coming from. So I am where my continent is Asia. I am in Asia continent. I am in India country, and I am in a maybe Delhi state. So Google will be doing what? Google will check my geolocation, and it will preferred, or it will forward my request to my nearest DNS server, which is maybe in Delhi itself. And this server will be responding me back. So now you can imagine how fast the response will be, how good the quality will be. That is called as a geolocation routing. So DNS can be combined with also latency based routing as well as with the failover routing for low latency and fault tolerance architecture. So GeoDNS, you can also combine it with the low latency as well as with the failover, so that it will not only go to the nearest DNS server, plus in the nearest DNS server maybe you have multiple DNS server, 1, 2, 3. So out of that, which one is having low latency, the request will go to that one. So that is called as a combination of geo plus low latency. So you are getting both function. You are getting the query resolved by the nearest DNS server to you, as well as the one which is having the low latency. So these are some of the policy of the DNS here. These are some of the complex type of policy also being supported by the AWS. If you are using AWS, you will be able to use any of this routing policy there. Here are the some information about what are the global reach of Route 53. Where are the Route 53 are nowadays available for AWS. So you can see these are some of the name we have in here in the North America. We have some in South of America. We have in Europe also. Especially if I try to mention here in Europe, nowadays we also have some of them are in Africa, like in South Africa we also have now Route 53. Then in Asia Pacific, here you see we are having in India also. There is so multiple places like Chennai is a city available in India, Mumbai is city in India. So these are the two cities there from India itself. Then we have Singapore country, we have Tokyo in Japan, we have Hong Kong, Manila. So these all are the other in Asia Pacific. So this is all about the Route 53 global reach. Where are the already AWS Route 53 is available there. So that was all about it, about the Route 53. Now let's try to have a look about the portal. How does the Route 53 option looks like, and what exactly the steps can be followed to configure Route 53. So let's have a look on it. Let me go to my AWS console here. and I look for the service here. The service I am looking, that is called as a Route 53. So you can directly search about it, Route 53. This is the service I am looking for. So let's go to that service. You can see here that when I reach to this service, Route 53 console, it is a global service. So this Route 53 service is available globally, and here are the options. In the dashboard you can see DNS management, traffic management, domain registration, availability monitoring. So very first step we have to follow, that is register a domain. According to your company, whatever the name you are looking for, you are going to register from here itself. You don't need to go to the GoDaddy or any other place. For example, my company is Sai Pali. So I look for Sai Pali dot, I know already one of my site, that is saipali.education. So let me check, is it available still over the internet? So I'll click on check. It will check and it will let you know that either this name is available to use or not. So right now it is telling me it is unavailable because saipali.education is already registered. It is all, somebody has already registered this name, and I will not be able to use it anymore. This name is already registered, you see here. So it is giving me some other option like saipali.biz is available at $16, saipali.info is available at $12, saipali.ninja is available at $18, saipali.org is available at $12. So what name is suitable for your company? You will have to first register. So this is the step of registering the domain name. That's the very first step. I'm not going to follow it because it will be charging that much money for a year, and I don't need this name. I'm just trying to showcase you that how the steps are going to be followed if you are using Route 53. So you will be just choosing the name, whatever name is suitable for your company. You will add to cart, you will buy it, and that will be going through a registration process, which will ask you your email ID, your mobile number, the payment system and all. And once you will be registered with it, thereafter what will be the next step? Let me show you. So once you already register the domain name, thereafter you will be able to go to the, after registration, this is the first step, you will be able to create the hosted zone. So how to create hosted zone? Let's click on hosted zone. Here you see, you will be able to give the name of which domain you have registered with. For me, I'm just assuming that maybe I have registered with saipali.com. Actually, I haven't registered this name, but I'm just taking an example that let's say that this is the company name you have registered with. So once you have registered with the previous step which I shown you, they will be giving you some other information. So first let me add just some description. Testing for saipali.com. Here you see the type. This is what I have discussed in theoretical topic, that there are two type of hosted zone: public hosted zone, private hosted zone. So I hope now you have understood it, that when you are configuring when you are creating a hosted zone, that time you need to choose it, either you want to go for public hosted zone or private. You have already the difference between them. So for me, for example, I go with the public hosted zone. If you want to add any tag, add it, otherwise leave it. Click on create hosted zone. So for me, I have just used the false name. It is not actually I have registered with. So it has just added it with the sum of information, like it has created a NS record, that is name server record, plus a startup authority record, but it has not added any A record or 4A record, such kind of information. So if you want to add it manually, you can import the zone file. So when you have registered the domain name, they give you the file which you can be imported here, or you can also go to manually create record, and here you see, this is what the routing policy is, which we have discussed before. Simple routing, weighted round robin policy, geolocation, failover, low latency type of policy, or multi-value answer policy. Which type of policy you want to use. Thereafter you go to next. Now here you define the record. So for example, I want to add a host record. So I will go for A record, that is version 4 IP address. If I have IP version 6, maybe I register my domain name and they give me the IP version 6 address, I will go with the 4A record. If I have an email server which I want to add here, I will go with the MX record. So very simple it is. If you have ever used DNS in Windows Server, it is very same kind of options are here. You can add the record and then you will be able to use it. So if I go back again to root 53, here from let me go to the down, or let's go to the console again of root 53. You will be able to see from here I have already added a hosted zone. If I click on it, it is going to tell me saipali.com. This is the domain name I have added here. So this complete practical will be only possible if I have already a domain registered name, and then I will be using it to follow the steps. But whatever the steps are, I have already shown you that how to create, how to register a domain, thereafter how to create a hosted zone, then how to create the policy. Once you are done with it, that means you are now ready to use the root 53, as simple as like that. So I hope it's clear to you all. I hope you have understood what is root 53 is and how to use it, how to configure it. So that was all in this video, and I hope this video was informative enough for you all, and I would like to thank you for watching.